Welcome to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. Are you evaluating your career in real estate? Feel like you're ready for a fresh start? Or ready to take your career to the next level? This is your podcast. Welcome back to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. I'm Meredith Fogel here with my co-host, Alicia Soikawa. Oh, and it's your anniversary today, isn't it? I just realized that.
Yesterday was our anniversary.
Yesterday. Happy anniversary. How many years?
28 years.
28 years.
Michael, yeah. Well, that's from our first date. So we celebrate that because we were very young and foolish and moved in very, very quickly and we never parted. So we really celebrate that first date a lot.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
that's why they say meet someone when you're young, because you're not smart enough to like pick everybody apart maybe until
well,
we've been married for years, understand that.
Say, 28 years later, that seems to have been
But we're still together, so I can't really say anything bad.
Yeah. Good. Congrats. All right. So we are talking about, funny that we're segueing from that into this, our topic today, which is you versus you, which actually could be really relevant in relationships sometimes, but we're not going to apply it to that today.
Yeah.
What we're applying
business, focus.
Is business, yes. And what we mean when we say you versus you is figuring out the fact, I think, that the competition is yourself, right? Like we always think, many times we think, that the adversary or the thing that's getting in our way is something that is out of our control, is someone else maybe, is a force that we didn't see coming. And really, when we realize it, we really take a good hard look, the adversary is ourselves. So I think the minute we can realize that, and Alicia, I have to give you credit because you're so good at cutting right to the chase of seeing that, both with the people that you coach and with your friends. I'm a huge beneficiary of your insights in that way. You're able to tell me, and I know others too, when the problem is us. Who says that? That's oh my God, what's her name? Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
The problem is me, right?
Yeah.
It's me.
She has a lot of wisdom in her words.
I know
the Swiftie Nation will agree.
Yes. So most of the time, that's the fact, right? It is you that is your own worst enemy. So we're talking about that and how you can create some diversification, some differentiation, some separation by using that philosophy first, as we are in what is absolutely a very challenging time in the real estate industry. So Alicia, when you hear you versus you, what comes up for you?
When I think about you versus you, and I think that's why we decided to call it this versus something else, we're going to reference, we always reference books and people that we speak about, like Ed Milet talks about separation season. So I'm going to give him credit for that. And we didn't want to call this podcast that because we really want to look at things that are resonate more, I guess, authentically with us and our business and not just like taking from other leaders. But I think we've learned so much from our time with Tom Ferry, our time with Tony Robbins, our time with each other, all of our readings and our book club. And I think we always have that thirst and knowledge to grow and learn. And I think that's where that comes from, is that everybody's on a different pace. So there's that saying, you can't measure your first inning to someone else's, sixth inning in baseball, if you use baseball terms, or, just like that you just mentioned, I've just celebrated 28 years with my husband together, almost 24 married, but you can't measure that relationship to someone that's been married just 3 years, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's not fair. It's not fair. There's a lot of things that we've had children, we've raised children, we've gone through health, parents passing away, all those things that it's the wisdom of time, but that's individual to each person. And I think it's kind of like that saying in real estate, for those of you watching that have done a deal, if you've done a deal, you've done a deal. Like every deal is unique. And I always found that so fascinating at the time when I became my agent, my broker had been in the business 30 years at that time. And he said, Alicia, honestly, in the 30 years of business, there's no one deal that's the same. Whether it's the loan, that's the different parties, different home, different terms, everything is different. Like, so every property is really unique. Even if you have the same model home, the same appliances, the same everything, it's different, right? Why? Because it's on a different lot.
Yeah.
It's on a different lot. which that lot itself, well, the terrain, everything is different. So it's like a fingerprint is what I would call it. So it's since humans have all, even twins have their own fingerprints. There's no person that's the same. We all have different pieces that make ourselves individuals. It's incredible because of that. But at the same time, we as humans want to belong to a community, something. So we look to reach, I think, to be a part of something. So I think that's where we find ourselves thinking that we need to be like that person or we need to be like that group because we want to belong. And that is a human response to wanting to be a part of something whole and greater than themselves. But at
Yeah.
the same time, we are individuals. So I think it's really important to honor the individual you are within yourself and say, this is where I am in my life right now, and I'm exactly where I need to be, whatever lesson that is, whatever I need to be learning. And it's okay that maybe this year I'm not selling as many houses, right? Let's say these agents that have come on in 2020, I'm sure a huge audience that you have, like, they're maybe newer in the business or they're thinking about coming on. And when we were at that crazy, I call it the fire hose season because of the, serendipitous of the rates low and the inventory low and all the things that were happening that caused such an influx of buyers and sellers at the same time. It was a very strange time in our business that probably will never be reduplicated again because of the circumstances, right?
Right.
Um, it's not, you can't really base, tomorrow on what happened in 2020 to 2023. It's just not a fair comparison again. So if that's the case, then why are you holding yourself against your 2021 version?
Mm.
Like that's a concept of like, if you continually live behind you and looking, you can never move forward. Like the people that stay in memory, you know what I'm saying? Like the people that
Yeah.
stay in their memories, the people like they say that the thing like they peaked in high school. They're always looking at their,
Oh, right. The good
right,
old days.
that concept. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that because there are some incredible things that happen in high school. There's such sweet memories. It's bittersweet. But I think if you can't let go of that to move forward into your new version,
Yeah.
then you will never know the joy of growth and continuing on. So that's where I mean by like you have to measure against yourself. So if you have a past version of yourself and like last year, maybe your growth is not the number of sales or volume. Maybe your growth is I brought an assistant on and I worked, I got 2 days off every week, no matter what. And I got to eat dinner with my kids every single night, but I still was able to bring enough money home to support our family.
Yeah.
I would consider that a bigger win than selling 25 more houses and being top 100. That's
I
just
love
me.
that. I love that. And I think it's interesting that sometimes with growth, we gain that kind of awareness about what actually matters. And to your point about focusing on things that can feel either distracting, can be limiting, or can sometimes be just stressors that focus us on the wrong things. I think there are a few things that kind of fall into this, for me at least, this you versus you category
Mhm.
that can kind of stunt our growth, I think, as people
Yeah.
often. One of those is just like you said, comparing yourself to other people. Um, Especially I see, and I wonder if you see this with some of your clients sometimes too, is crafting their business in a way that they just think it's supposed to be done
Mhm.
because they've seen a model, they've seen a competitor, maybe it's a mentor, an example of some kind that they feel like that's the path that they're supposed to follow. And therefore, they go down a road that ends up either at a wall or at an unfulfilling spot or at a place that turns them into something that they didn't ever intend to be, or isn't making the most use of their natural talents. I think that's one place. Do you see that happen?
It made me think about that because I think that's something that is a dangerous thing that can happen in our business.
Yeah.
So a lot of times everything is focused on in our business of how many units you sold, how big your team is,
Yeah.
and how much volume
Yep.
and the BCI, which
Yep.
means gross commission earned for those of you that, so that would be just taking like if you're getting 3% or 2% or whatever that may be, whatever your compensation is, that's like adding all that up before any splits are taken, any taxes are taken, any expenses are removed. They just use that. It's like looking at revenues, right?
Right.
It's looking at revenues and businesses, but that's a really, not a true good way to measure businesses. Like you think about that book, Profit First, and think about really, I always make that comment. If you make $1 million, it looks so exciting and enticing, and I want to be a millionaire. So technically you're a millionaire. But if you spend $900,000 or $950,000 to make that million and you bring home 50 versus you have someone that may be a 250,000 earner, but then their costs are only $10,000,
Mhm.
who's really like,
Right, right.
I think there's a misnomer in our business, and because so much stress is on that,
Yeah.
that's why realtors get a bad rap for just spending, 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 spending. Oh, I'll buy that. I'll get the shiny ball. I'll get that tool. It's going to help me sell more. They're not paying attention to what's going out because all they're focused on is that return
Yeah,
and not what is the crunching the numbers of for every marketing dollar I spend, I get how much money back. So no
right.
one teaches realtors how to run a business because all of our classes, everything is about things that are nothing to do with running a business. It's kind of, I think that happens a lot in a lot of businesses, happens with doctors. It
Yeah,
happens in every business, really. Like, they don't teach you how to run a business.
yeah.
It's a very different skill set.
It's almost like when you go to pre-licensing class, for those of you who are brand new licensees, I know you've heard people say, just kind of forget about 99% of that because you might need to know the acreage of a lot at some point, but you're never going to want to really need to know what a township is unless you live in an area where there are townships, but there are a few. There's a lot that you'll never know and a lot you haven't learned until you do a deal, to your point. And then there's like another level that happens. So you start to build, you start to gain, you start to grow. And I think you're exactly right, Alicia. It's a great example of when we can be our own worst adversary as we're trying to hit this mark, throw this dart at a dartboard, that there's a whole other dartboard behind it. And we didn't even know it was there. And that's one of the things in coaching that we do is we pull that secret panel back and we go, that's great. You made $1 million. Let's pull out your P&L and see what your actual profit was. I can't even
That's
tell you
really
how.
scary. And I would
Yeah.
say very few people really do that.
Oh,
I
very.
would say
I
that.
can't
I
tell
mean,
you
yeah,
how many.
there's a lot of agents still operating on their personal business account, their
Oh, yeah.
personal checking accounts.
Yeah.
I don't think any of mine are because I'd smack them um, for the virtual screen. What the hell? Did I teach you nothing? But
When people come into our coaching world, if
they
they've
have no
come
idea.
from, they
No
could
one
be
ever taught them. No one
decades,
ever
right?
taught them.
They don't know. And here's what happens. They get to a decision point of hiring a person or making a major investment in something, and they have no data with which to make that decision. So how you make decisions when you have no rationale emotionally,
Um,
right?
that looks good.
Yeah, right. Emotionally or just
Sure.
the shiny penny thing. Yeah.
Okay, whoever calls them, right? Who's ever. And so I think that's the hardest piece is that there's a lot of promises. And I think that's the one thing that really upsets me. I tell all of our coaching clients, don't buy anything, don't do anything at Summit, don't purchase anything. Tell them I got to talk to my coach. Let's
Yeah.
look at it. Let's see how, take an audit of what's going on. It's just like taking an audit. You got to take a social audit. You got to take audits, personal, like what are you spending on? How many people have those subscriptions that they don't even use? Like, what do you have things that you don't even realize you are paying for every month. And you're like,
Oh, yeah. Huge.
I think someone skimmed out and realized just on a call, they saved $8,000 a year.
Wow. That's incredible. That pays for
That's a
coaching.
lot of money. And then now, oh, surprise, surprise. Now we can do these other things we wanted to do that you were fighting me on. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Set up a savings account, any of those things. Yeah. And the other thing that you brought up, I think, is the other place where we can be you versus you is when you're hyper focused on a competitor
Mhm.
and you are trying to either replicate what they did or trying to like become who they are. So for example, you also use the analogy of building a team, like feeling like we have to build a team. Your team has to be a certain number of people. Your team has to make this much, income without any look at profit. But
Mhm.
there are lots of ways to do this business successfully. And there are lots of the most fulfilled, most successful agents who are fabulous team leaders and many who are solo agents as well. So knowing that you have the freedom to
Yeah.
build your business anyway that feels best to you. That's one of the greatest things about this business. There are lots of ways to be successful. There's some basic things to
Yeah.
look at, but
Yeah.
there's not one way of scaling to success that works for everybody.
I think that's really important to realize because I think everyone's like, I don't want to do it wrong. Have you heard that people say, I don't
Oh
want to do it.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you really going to mess up? There's really, I mean, unless you don't write the contract wrong, which I was like, please God, don't do that. But I mean, honestly, you got to make that decision. Like, what is the outcome you want before you decide what path you want to take? Because I've talked to several people, and I've been guilty of that too, thinking that I wanted all this stuff because everybody else wanted it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what we do. It looks so fun and great, so I'll do that. Like, you don't really realize what it takes to get to that point and how much you sacrifice for that. And then you got to come scale it back because I'm a mother, I have kids, there are things I want to do in my life. If you're a single guy that's 25, we're going to have complete different needs. If you're not married and you're single and you're 25, yeah, to you working 100 hours a week may not be a big deal because you're a dude and you
Right.
don't have kids and all the things that are, you know what I mean? It's very different. So I don't think it's a fair thing to look at someone and go, I'm not good because I'm not where that person is. Even whether if you're comparing age, if you're comparing whatever, comparisonitis is something a lot of leaders talk about, and that's where that whole imposter syndrome comes from because you're
Yeah.
like, oh, who am I? Who am I to do that? Like, and I love that saying. One of our group members, there's a new book by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he said that quote, that fantasies and dreams are just um, memories that haven't happened yet. But
Yes.
like, what is the identity you have, which will help you get to where you want to be? So
Right.
if that's the version of you that you see yourself in, so whether it's fitness, business, being that person that attracts the right partner in life for people that are not in relationships, or being the person you want to have a better relationship, who do you need to be? Focusing again on yourself
Yes.
versus where you were, and not look at where you were and beat yourself up. Give yourself a little bit of grace, like that's where you were in your life, but you know better, so you do better. That's it. It's as simple as that. I think we need to not complicate things. And I think that's ultimately one of the things my biggest takeaway is when things are getting too complicated and seem too hard, then you need to break it down again and be like, how can I make this simple?
Mm.
You're not going to implement it. You're going to resent it, and it's not going to have longevity in your life.
Right.
Right? If something's difficult and you make it difficult for people, whatever that may be, for yourself even, it's not going to stick. It's not going to land.
Let me ask you about this. So you just mentioned something that was one of the things I thought about when we started talking about this you versus you piece. And I think a place where in a time of change and uncertainty like we're in right now, that I see some people falling into is either a pattern of, and we know our lives are kind of dictated sometimes by these patterns if we don't choose to step out of them, either a pattern of panic of, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to make this work. I can't even think about this. There's so much noise. I keep hearing that over and over again. Or a pattern of, no big deal. I got this. And not really facing head on what needs to be contended with. So that can be a place where we really get in our own way as well. What do you say to people who are in either of those mindset patterns?
I think both are dangerous. The first is dangerous because when you panic, number one, physically, what happens when you panic? You can feel like you can't breathe, you have shallow breathing, you're not clear-headed, so you may make mistakes, you may be abrupt to people, rude, whatever have you, may just not absorb, you're not thinking clear. So a lot of times that panic it's kind of like the whole fatalistic like the world is ending. And so
Yeah.
you're running around with your head chopped off. That's the visualization I'm getting, right? Like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And then creating that whole then everyone else is like, oh my God, if she's freaking out, I need to freak out. Like the whole and then the misery loves company, right? Then you tend to attract people that are like that, right? And so then there's no clarity because you're just with a bunch of people, everyone's freaking out. So you're just running around in circles. That's not really getting anything accomplished. You're not hearing what you need to hear. You're not implementing what you need to implement to move forward. You're just caught in that state of that cycle, the toxic, the vicious cycle of drama is what I would say. We all know there's dramatic, toxic people everywhere. You see them out, energy vampires, however you want to say it. People that everything just constantly is a disaster.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everybody knows someone like in their life. And if you're that person, then you need to look at the mirror and be like, why am I that person? But I'm just
You don't
saying
know they're that person.
they do.
You think?
They're just addicted to it. They don't
Oh,
know how to get at it, but they know. They'll even say, I don't even know why this keeps happening to me.
oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the phrase
That's
you
the classic you versus you. That right there. Yes.
just keep like they like this thing just smacked them down and they were not even a part of anything that happened. Like they had no choice and that they were being held hostage by all the choices they made. And then you have the other person that puts their head in the ground, the ostrich. Like, I'm just going to pretend this is not happening and I'm going to deal with it later.
Yep. Yep.
Right. Kick the can down the road. So that's it. It's, what's so funny? I can almost make a parallel metaphor, whatever similarity to like when you're dealing with people with home people that live in homes. You have the first person who's like neurotic, crazy. They're almost like happy to have that client, except they tend to attract the most crazy buyers to their house that find every single thing wrong. And even though the house is immaculate and perfect, and you're like, but you attract that, it's like you attracted your match, right?
Right. Oh, that's so true.
And then you have the one, and the next thing you know, you're replacing sod. And you're like, what is happening in this world that we're living in? Like, it doesn't even make sense to you. And then you have another one that's like, oh, I didn't realize that my half of my house was sinking into the ground. And you're like,
And
did
the
you
buyer's
not
like, that's
notice
no
that?
problem. The buyer's
Oh,
like, oh, we wanted that. We wanted to
I'll
have this
take care of
happen.
it. Or the one that takes all the closing costs and doesn't use any of the repairs that he was supposed to use it for, and then just figures it'll go away. You
Right.
know? So like that's what I'm saying. It's like deferred maintenance.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Or it's like this is what Oprah Winfrey called it. She's like, if you ignore the pebbles, the first little pebbles that come, next thing rocks show up, and next thing the boulder shows up.
Yeah.
And it's not to the boulder smacks you down that you have to face it. And
Right.
usually when it smacks you down, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So it's like the people that want to ignore the little spot, that need to go look at the dermatologist, and the next thing you know, they have full blown like skin cancer, like things like that. Like there are parallels in all areas of life that if you want to choose to ignore something, it will you're going to deal with it. So it's better just to deal with it up front. The elephant in the room needs to be dealt with. And it's about,
Exactly.
right? It's not as bad as it is usually is not as bad as you think it's going to be if you just deal with it too.
Right. So, so true. All right. So you're around people like that. Let's say that you have you've been around people who are creating this energy that's feeding into you not being the best version of yourself. How do you, to talk about separating, creating a separation for yourself? And I want to talk about it personally, but I also want to talk about it in terms of business, because what we know is at a time like this, if we can create differentiation, some separation for ourselves in a season like this, and we're in a season of change, but we're also right now, we're recording this in the very beginning of August. And August is a traditionally slower time. A lot of agents check out, go on vacation. They're like, oh, nobody else is working. I won't work either. So this is a really good opportunity, I think, for people who want to hustle, who want to get out there, work those extra days, put the extra time in doing open houses. Call your clients who don't have their minds on work quite so much right now and are going to be more receptive to your phone calls. It's a good time for those agents to start to get out and fill their pipelines. So let's start first with, if you are either around that crowd that's like, no, come do this with us, come lunch with us every day, go on vacation with us. I'm not saying don't go on vacation, but if you're like, no, my goal is here and I want to hit this by the end of
Yeah.
the year, what do you do to make sure that you're able to hit that target and not be sucked in with either the energy sucking vampires or people who are bad influence?
I think the biggest thing is I'm really grateful. First of all, I think that Michael and I have worked really hard, and we made a comment about that everybody in our circle in my life is there intentionally. I don't have anybody in my life that I would say is there and I'm like, I need them to leave. Does that make sense? Like I don't have anybody there that I
Yes.
would consider toxic.
I'm
Or
getting a cough drop. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold and I'm
that's
starting to
okay. This is real life, people. We actually get sick.
live,
It's so
live
much
occurring.
fun. But I think honestly, I think when I really think about it, because I actually had that question, someone was like, you should go on the vacation and do this. And I actually am taking my daughter away this weekend for her sweet 16 is in September. And we always do an annual shopping trip. We started this a few years ago, for back to school shopping, number one, and also just to have one-to-one girl time and just have fun doing it, so it's back to school stop and we don't buy things year round. They're not overly consumption children, which we're really fortunate to have.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of this is our time. And so usually we just do a local thing where I would just do a drive and we stay in a hotel and we shop. And I thought, you know what? let's go down and see my brother. He's going to let us stay in his, little Airbnb he has. He doesn't have anybody there. We're going to shop. We're going to do a different location, and it makes it more special because she's 16 this year. And in the past, I would have said, no, I can't do that. I can't block the weekend. And I said, you know what? This is why I do the work I do.
Mm.
So when I say like when there's separation season or you're trying to you versus you, I think the first thing you need to look at is like, what are the categories in your life that you want to feed?
Mm.
Everybody has categories. And this will go along, with the second part when we do the next podcast on planning. But it's one of those things. I always have this belief now too that if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Ooh, tell me about
And
that.
because if you say yes to everything, you're saying no to something else, whether it's your
Okay.
sleep, working out, things that are important to you. If you keep saying yes to all the people, the clients that drain you, you're gonna say no to someone.
Mhm.
And you've just stated that these people are important in my life, my health is important in my life, my reading, my development's important, and all of a sudden you've just inserted someone else there. That's an integrity issue within yourself, again, you versus you, that you don't even know you just put yourself in a dilemma
Wow.
that you could avoid just by not putting it there.
Mm.
So I think it's more about, I'm very intentional now about saying sorry. I don't say sorry anymore because there's nothing to be sorry about. Like it's a very woman thing. Anybody that's men that are listening don't seem to have this issue as much. Women, because we're taught as young girls, especially if you're of our generation, Gen X,
Mhm.
that you are polite.
Mhm.
Manners, be polite. Don't, be modest. You were just raised a certain way. And the biggest thing is I don't say sorry when I don't have anything to be sorry about. I say I'm sorry if I've hurt someone's feelings, if I've done something wrong. I'm sorry, I won't do that again. That's different. Or if I made a mistake, I apologize, I made a mistake. That's different. That is something to be sorry about. Now, when something is unfortunate, it's unfortunate. Like, and unfortunately for you, I cannot come.
Unfortunately for you.
Right.
I'm laughing because
Unfortunately
I'm
for you,
thinking
I
about,
cannot lower my compensation.
oh,
Unfortunately
that's good.
for me.
I'm
Unfortunately for
laughing
you, yeah, right?
because so I had to learn this playing pickleball because I make a lot of mistakes playing pickleball. And I would always be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So if I have a
Yeah.
partner, right? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And finally someone said to me, it was like me and three guys playing, and they're like, stop apologizing. And I was like, oh, they're like, stop saying sorry. I think I was annoying them because I was saying sorry so much. But I should have said, unfortunately for you, I missed that ball. But
I
actually,
think it's,
I just
yeah, or
stopped
you
saying
could just
sorry.
say, damn.
Right. I do that
Damn.
sometimes. I'm like, shoot. But I do think that it was such a reflex, and I didn't even understand how natural it was for me just to, and none of them were apologizing. They would say, damn, they would say something else, but
They're like, oh, that's what I mean. So that's what I think that we take away the value of the word I'm sorry
mm,
when you don't have
using
anything
it.
to be sorry about. Right? Would you
So
agree?
true. So true. Yes. All right. So for agents who are in a position where they want to employ your tactic of saying if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a no. What if it's like they're like, well, cold calls. That's not a hell yeah.
Yes, it is. Cold calls
Okay.
are a hell yeah if that's your lead pillar. So
Okay.
cold calls are a hell yes. Then let me preface this. If you have no sphere, you have no past clients, you have no way to get business without making those cold calls, and you have leads,
Okay.
then you need to make your calls.
So those are non-negotiable. Hell yes.
And I hell yes, because that's going to lead you to the outcome you want.
Mhm.
Because we're so focused on like where my deals, where my deals, where my deals, where my deals. Well, you need to make the calls to get the deals. So you need to make the calls to get the appointments, to get the appointments, to make the deals, to make the deals, to get the closing. Right.
Exactly. And that
So
is
it's just
actually the
like
order it goes in for everybody listening
how
out there.
it's you got to make the calls. And if it's your sphere or past clients, you got to connect. You got to
Yes.
connect, 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 connect. You have to build the relationship. Building a relationship doesn't happen by text.
Right.
It will never happen by text. I don't care what generation you are in. I love text all day long too. I like voice messages all day too. But until you get belly to belly,
Mhm.
and I use this because we are a belly to belly business, and that is why the e-buyer programs where the computer lets you in and you do your own thing did never took off because
Exactly.
you cannot have a belly to belly business without being belly to belly.
Right.
So
Well, that's
that
this is
one, right,
trust.
right. And
Can't
that
trust somebody who
trust
you
is everything. Trust is the more powerful than value.
Yep. 100%. Well said. Yeah. Okay, so let's say that right now we have people who are either in, let's say going in a direction that they know is not right for them, or they know that they are their own worst enemy in terms of what they're doing, how they're feeling, how they're thinking, what they're doing or not doing. What do we say to those people that would right now that they could take away from this episode and act on that is going to help them separate from the version of themselves that they are right now and that vision for themselves that they see in their future?
I think the number one thing you just said that the vision you see of who is that person? What does that person do? How do they behave in the morning? What does that person eat? How does
Mhm.
that person talk, walk, dress, show up? What is the code of conduct and standards does that person have?
Mhm.
So it cannot be a general version of who you want to become. It has to be very specific on a future Alicia is this. And
Mhm.
then those are the things you need to embody now.
Mhm.
So if future version is going on 10 listing appointments a day, then current version needs to be making calls and booking.
Mhm.
That's the easiest way I can say it. If
I
future
love it.
version is felt and looking all great, then current version needs to get up at 5 in the morning and go to the gym non-negotiable and not
I love it.
not eat the bonbon sweets that they want to eat.
And that creates that hell yes, right? Like that's if you see things through the lens of that future you, then the person who gets up at 5 a.m., that's not I don't want to when the alarm goes off. That's hell yes, I'm going because that's the person I am. If it's the
That's who
10
you are. It's
booking 10
not about,
listings,
yeah, it's not like I'm tired. Well, no, because
yes,
that's not who you are. Like
yes.
when you tie yourself to the identity, it will pull you
Mm,
because it's not, you can't push yourself. It's not the motivation. It's not, there is discipline and consistency. Yes, because it's in the light of that's who you want to be.
mm,
That's who you
I love
are.
it. I
Just
love
like
it.
that's how the Olympians do it. Think about it. They're visualizing their
Yes.
workout. They visualize winning.
Yes.
They visualize it's happened.
Mhm.
So they
Yeah.
just are running it through their heads. You see them doing it. And any elite athlete, any elite performer, actor, whatever, they are already in the role. They already believe it's happened. Like Jim Carrey wrote that
Yes.
check to himself. Remember? He put it away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like all those things mean something. People just don't understand. It's very difficult concept for someone.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that takes a long time to understand and grow into. And sometimes you have to try it, like experiment with it first and then see it manifest to get that it's real. So there is I think this is a Joe Dispenza saying, gratitude is the ultimate form of receivership. So
Yeah.
practicing gratitude for whatever that, whatever the rewards are that have come to that future version of yourself, whatever the life looks like for that future vision of yourself, whatever your business looks like for the future business version of yourself, practice gratitude. You don't have to journal. You can just talk about it. You can envision it. You can just feel it in yourself, how grateful you are for the life you're building. And then it's interesting how the receivership starts to fall in place.
Oh, being open to receive is something it's very difficult for individuals for some reason. They're
Yeah.
very caught up in, that's mine, that's mine. The receivership's different than that's mine,
Right. Oh, yeah.
right? So like I call it being greedy, greedy guts.
Hmm.
But it's the concept, like you said, just say thank you. Thank you for the
Yeah.
moment that I'm in right now. Like thank you for this powerful moment. Like I've been reading a lot about trust. I'm reading The One Fee Agent, which has been fantastic. And it's really focused on trust,
Yes.
building the relationship. And that's been and since I started focusing on that, I've been getting all these calls and messages from past clients. And it's just been,
Funny.
and I hang out, I'm like, thank you. Like, this is a reminder. This is what I want. This is the life I want. My clients that are reaching out, clients that are like, I trust you're going to guide me. And I'm like, I take that with such weight on like, I'm very excited, is what I'm trying to say, because I know that's what I'm meant to do. And so once you feel that connection, and allowing yourself to say, this is what I want is different than what the other agent may want. They don't want that. This is what I want. And being okay that it's different than the other agent next to you. I think it's really hard when you're coming up in class and you see
Yeah.
everybody, you think you're supposed to want the same things, or you're doing expired, I'll do expired, or I'll
Yeah.
do that with you.
Mhm.
I made a decision for myself. That's not my path for me. I can
Mhm.
do it. I've done it. I understand that process. but this is the business I want to work and I want to grow it.
Yeah. And I think that you just hit the nail on the head. This is a great way to kind of wrap up this episode, I think, is that's the separation, right? That's the creating separation, is figuring out what is your unique version of yourself, your life,
Yes.
your
Yes.
business look like? And then what are the things that you need to do? What are the actions you need to take to create that future vision? And that'll create natural separation from everybody else, because there's only one unique path, one fingerprint, like you said at the beginning, that is a piece of who that future person is. And that's the path that you need to follow.
Well, it's very true. I mean, the head is, we all know things. We're learning. We're on this conversation right now, and we all understand everything, can comprehend. But to actually feel it and put it in your heart is where the transformation happens.
Yeah.
There is a disconnect, I think, for some people. And
Yeah.
until you can actually feel it, like I love that you use those words before, it will never be.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, hopefully this helped. I think when we started with the you versus you, I think that really is the ultimate separation. It can feel like we're very attached by that versus in the middle. But what if you flip that over and that versus becomes, that V becomes the path, that maybe it's a hill that you have to
right.
climb to
Yeah.
get the bridge, to get to the future version of yourself. Keeping that in mind, that's the ultimate differentiator. All right. Well, we hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Tune into our next one. We're going to talk about the power of planning. But for now, this has been So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. We'll see you next time. We are so grateful you have joined us today. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe to our show or share it with people that you think would benefit. And please remember to leave us a review or rating on the platform on which you are listening.
And if you've got questions about Tom Ferry coaching, have the both of us here, please contact us directly. We would love to answer your questions. Or if you're just curious, love to have a conversation. You can reach us at any of our social media outlets or shoot us a direct message.